Hello guys, I hope you are all doing well. In this video, we are going to look at case control structure or switch case statements. So let's begin. Now let's see general architecture of switch case, right? What happens inside switch, we write a value and that value is compared with each cases, okay? And if that value is matched with any of these values, for example C1, C2, C3, then those code will execute. And if none of the values are matched, then default, whatever is written in default, those code will execute. For example, let's say here the switch is value is 1, okay? Let's say here the value was 1 and instead of C1 it is written 1, here it is written 2 and here it is written 3, right? Now what will happen, it will see the value is 1. Now which case is true? Now 1 is equal to 1 here, so statement 1 will execute and statement 2 will execute, okay? As soon as it will encounter the break keyword, the control will go next to its block, switch block, okay? Similarly, let's say now the value was 2, okay? Value was 2. Now which case is true right now? This case, okay? 2 is equal to 2, okay? So statement 3 will execute and none of the other statement will execute, right? Similarly, let's say if here the value was 4, okay? So we will see here that this is not true, this is not true, this is not true, none of these statements are true, okay? So when none of the values are matched with the cases, then default block will execute. So here statement 5 will execute, right? Note that here I had used colon, okay? With break it is used semicolon, right? Another thing is that here we should write a value. It is must to have a value here, okay? For example, I can write here int a equals to 4, let's say, then I can write here a, okay? But when the values are written with cases, here it should be a constant, okay? For example, here case 1 I can write it here, case a I can write here, okay? But if I try to write here case a, let's say a is a normal variable, or let's say there is another variable b equals to 2, okay? So I cannot write case b, okay? This is not allowed. And also float values are not allowed. Float values not allowed, okay? So inside here in cases I can only write integer constant or character constant. No other constant is allowed here, okay? Now let's see an example. Let's say there is a program in which user enters two numbers, okay? Let's say these numbers are num1 and num2, okay? Then we will tell the user that press 1 to add both of these numbers, press 2 to subtract, press 3 to multiply, okay? And press 4 to divide, okay? Now what we will do is that we take user input in a variable, let's say choice, okay? And based on the choice we will give the output. For example, if the user given input is 2, so we will find num1 minus num2 and give output to the user, okay? Now what will be its main logic will be choice. For example, let's say here it was switch and there will be choice, right? Now based on the choice the operations will take place, okay? For example, if the user write here case 1, okay, if the choice is 1, then what will I do? I will add the number. So the output should be something like printf %d num1 plus num2, okay? And here break. Similarly, if the user input is 2, okay, if the choice of the user is 2, then I write printf, okay, %d num1 minus num 2, right? And then break. Okay, similarly if user input is 3, then I'll write printf %d num1 multiply by num2, right? Then break. Okay, and also if the user input is 4, then printf %d num1 divide by num2. Okay, and break. Now this entire piece of block is enough for making this program. Okay, now we are assuming here that user has already input number 1 and number 2 using scanf. Okay, then we had done a printf, we had executed a printf statement in which it is written something like this: printf press 1 to add, press 2 to subtract, press 3 to multiply, and so on. Right, now then we will ask here, let's say printf enter a choice, enter choice. Okay, and with scanf we will take the input in the choice variable. Okay, now let's say the user given input is 1. Now what will happen? Case 1 will be true and this statement will execute and our output will be num1 plus num2. Okay, similarly if the choice is, let's say 4, then this case will be executed. Okay, this case will be true and this line will be executed, right? But there is a problem here, we had not used default. Okay, this using default is not mandatory but it is required. For example, if user write here, let's say the choice given is 5, right? Now none of these cases will be true. Okay, but we want to tell the user that whatever you had given the input is not correct. So in this case we can write here a default. Okay, and I'll write here printf %d, no %d, printf only invalid input, right? We generally use default for this purpose. This is above it. Okay, for this purpose, that when none of these cases are matched, then what action should I perform or program should perform. Okay, now if the user given input is 3, then it will give me num1 multiply num2. Similarly, if user input is 4, then it will give me divide. For 2, it will give me num1 1 2, and if any other number other than 1 2 3 4 is given, then invalid input will be given as output. Okay, now another thing is that these cases can be shuffled. For example, here I can write case 2 and here case 1. Okay, there is no problem in that. And also that in cases I can write the arithmetics of constant. For example, I can write here 1 plus 2. Okay, this will be treated as 3. Okay, but I cannot write arithmetics of variables. Okay, just like a variable is not allowed. Okay, I am assuming int a is a variable, just like, or let's say it is initialized to 1. Just like a variable is not allowed in cases, similarly an operation with the variable is also not allowed. Another thing is that no two cases can be same. Okay, for example, here it is case 1, then I cannot write another case with 1. Okay, or we can say if here was case 3, right, then I cannot make another case with 1 plus 2. Why? Because both means the same thing. Okay, so cases cannot be same, right? Now let's see why we use here break statements. Okay, importance of break statement in switch. Now let's see here, inside switch I had written 1, right? Now which case is true? This one. So which statement will execute? Statement number 1. Okay, now let's say instead of 1 here 2 is written. Now which case is true? This case. Okay, so statement 2 will execute. Now note here that no break statement is written. Now what will happen, that it will go on further and further until it encounters the break keyword. Now what will happen, statement 2 will execute, then statement 3 will also execute, and statement 4 will also execute. Okay, now it will encounter the break keyword and the control will go outside the switch body. Okay, now another example, let's say here it is written 3. Now which code will execute? Statement 3 will execute and statement 4 will execute. Okay, whichever case is equivalent to this one, then after that all the statements will execute until it encounters the break keyword. Okay, here when switch inside switch there is 3, note that statement 2 is not executing because this case is not true. Okay, but statement 3 was executed and statement 4 was executed. Okay, now let's say here was switch 4. Okay, then only this case is true, then statement 4 only will execute. Okay, and if let's say here was 10. Okay, now note that none of these cases are true, so it will go to the default, it will execute statement 5. Okay, even though there is no break statement is written, but since the body is itself ending, so the control will go to the next line, right? So this is why we used break keyword. Another thing, let's say I am writing here 10 greater than 1. Okay, now which statement will execute? Okay, 10 greater than 1, it is a conditional operator and internally it will return me 1 because the condition is true. So this statement will execute. Okay, I can also write here with variables. Let's say there is a variable int a is equals to 4. Okay, and I write here a is equals to 2. Okay, valid statement is written. Now what will happen? Which a will become 2, right? So switch inside it a and the value of a is 2. Okay, so this case will be true and statement 2 will execute, and also there is no break statement right now, so statement 3 and statement 4 will also execute. Okay, so remember that inside it I can also write any sort of expressions. Okay, also note that based on the cases the control goes to that particular line. Okay, that is the reason why it is known as case control structure. For example, if here value was let's say 3, okay, so the control is going according to the case. Okay, then those line will execute based on the case. Whatever case is matched, then those pieces of line will be executed until a break statement is encountered. Okay, so based on the cases, the control goes to that particular line. Okay, that's why it is known as case control structure. Another thing is that it is also known as switch case or simple switch statements, or also sometimes switch case default. Okay, because default plays an important role in switch statements, right? Now last thing is that the same program can also be made using the if else ladder. Okay, for example here I can write if a is equal 1, then statement 1 will execute. Okay, and if it is not, then if again a is equal 2, then statement 2 will execute. Okay, else if a is equal 3, then statement 3 will execute, and so on. Okay, just like here we can make the same program here. Now the question arises here, which of these two we should use, right? So we should always prefer using switch. Basically there are two reasons to prefer switch statements. First of all, it is easy to understand, right? Easy to understand, or better structure we can say. Okay, now here it is clear that if this case is true, this line will execute. If this case is true, this line will execute. Okay, but here if you see, it is not much good in looking. Okay, the control, or we can say it is not easy to understand. We have to first check a equal 1, then else, then if, then again else, then again if. Okay, in this situation it is much clear to read and grasp easily. Okay, second point is that the switch statement during compilation, it creates a jump table. Okay, what happens? It makes a table based on its cases. Okay, for example, if the case is 1, then these lines will execute. If the case is 2, these line will execute. If the case is 3, these line will execute, and so on. Okay, so during the compilation itself, it creates a table. Okay, what happens then in execution, it uses this jump table, and the execution of the code will become much more faster, right? Note again, execution of the code become much more faster. Okay, but here no such jump table is created, and compared to the switch statement, this if else ladder is generally slow in execution. Okay, so also remember that. So two main reasons were that it is easy to understand, or we can say it has a better structure to understand, or it is much more faster than the if else ladder. That's why we use the switch statements, right? So that's all for today, guys. I hope you like the video. If you have any doubt, you can comment it down, and thanks for watching. I hope to see you in the next video.